All right. Welcome everyone to Elevate with V. I'm so excited to be here with everyone. This podcast was inspired by my own journey and as a way to express gratitude to those beautiful souls that have helped me navigate during some of my most challenging times. And I would love to share who they are and their amazing gifts with all of you. So I can't wait to introduce my guest today, Emily Harrison. So a little bit about Emily. She is the founder, director of the Akashic Academy, a modern day mystery school dedicated to sharing knowledge that is empowering the planet to resource superconscious intelligence from within. In 2021, Emily was named one of the 5 most innovative businesswomen by Entrepreneur Magazine after being featured on CBS, NBC, HBO, Lifetime, Netflix, Thrive, and at Harvard University. Emily is now creating a quantum in-person experiences within the most profound grid points on the planet, so people can experience accelerated activation and embodiment of their soul mission. Woo! Powerful stuff right there. So I just want to quickly share my connection to Emily. I found her on Facebook. I'm sure the universe guided me to her. And this was probably during the pandemic or sometime last year. And I was just immediately drawn in to like this big personality, like so confident. And of course, her sense of humor. I love her sense of humor. So I just started to like join her lives. And I was so drawn into the information that she was talking about. I was like, Akashic Records, what is this? This is like such an amazing thing. And so I remember she had offered a beginner level class, actually complimentary, for us to like come and check it out. And I remember taking that class and it was just so amazing. Like I'm actually getting chills right now just thinking about it because it was so powerful and it gave me a chance to really kind of taste what this thing is that she's so involved in. So I truly see you, Emily, as like a thought leader, and your passion to share knowledge about the power of the Akashic Records is so contagious. So I cannot wait for people to hear more. So welcome, Emily.
B. Not only am I so thrilled to be here and to be part of the legacy that you're creating on the planet, but I'm so proud of you and watching how you are stepping up as a thought leader. You know, takes one to know one, girl. So it has been a joy, a pleasure, an honor for me to see you stepping into your gifts, your voice. Thank you. And to be part of that and to create space for us to step into our soul mission, it just makes me so delighted to be here with you. But like I said, most of all, I'm proud of you. I feel honored and privileged to be part of the legacy that you're leaving on the planet. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Listen, everybody can tell there's such a love fest in here, and I just love that. And, you know, I think it's so important for all of us to kind of share more of what we're doing. And I think so many of us has been like in quotes closeted for enough time now where it's like time to come out and share. And obviously, Emily, you've been doing this for a while. So this is, you know, definitely something newer for me. It took all that inner work and time for me to get to a place where I was like, okay, now I'm ready to sort of come out and, you know, share. And for me, it's truly an honor and a privilege to have you and so many other amazing leaders who are, you know, coming forth, bringing forth all these amazing tools and knowledge that are going to be so amazing for, you know, the audience that's going to come and listen to this, whether it's today, tomorrow, in the future, you know, and it's timeless. It's timeless. This information is timeless.
Yes. Well, we're experiencing this renaissance of esoteric wisdom that's been hidden, it's been buried. And it's not like you can't find it, it's right in front of our face, right? But because of our vibrational frequency, how we've been stuck in our own imprisonment, we don't see it. But now that there are so many leaders who are coming forward to support frequency, just raise your frequency, people, then the unseen becomes seen. And all of this wisdom that has been hidden and suppressed is now coming into the light for all of us to figure out how do we use this to actually change our lives.
I love that. So, this show is highlighting healing journeys and how we've each navigated to some of the darkest storms to sort of get to the silver lining. So I'm going to kind of come back to the fact that there are a lot of people who would have never heard of the word, what is Akashic Records? So I'd love for you to share from your perspective what the Akashic Records are.
The Akashic Records are the realm of consciousness where all information exists. It's like a giant library. However, here's the difference between the information that we experience as humans and the information in the Akashic Records. It's a frequency difference. So when I talk about this is a realm of consciousness where all information is stored, the information is stored from a neutral perspective, meaning unconditional love and zero judgment. I've been a human for 45 years now in this lifetime, V, and I can tell you that my experience and the information that I have in my field, it's very much filled with perspective, right? It's charged with what my experience has been, and it doesn't necessarily give me this omnipotence, this whole picture of what's actually going on from a soul level. So when we learn to tap into this field of intelligence, what happens is we can leave our perspective behind, our charge, our way that we've experienced, whether it's a trauma or whether it's something in our life that we want to invite forward. I mean, so many people use the Akashic Records to create new timelines to make shifts in our lives so that we can manifest what it is that we truly desire. Well, in order to do that, we have to see the bigger picture. We have to see all sides of what's happening and why it's happening so that we can make shifts and changes. When we're stuck in our limited human perspective, we're limited to just how we experience something. And so the Akashic Records gives us that omnipotence, that God perspective, so that we can truly understand what it is that we're missing. And this entire world that we're living in here together, V, right? This reality that we're all experiencing here, this is a hologram. And the hologram is built on zeros and ones, all data. So when we learn to tap into God consciousness, when we have access to infinite data, that's what returns our power and our ability to see the bigger picture, make the choices that are actually leading us towards what it is that we want in our life, whether it's healing, to release the areas where we've been entrenched in our own imprisonment, and truly create our dream lives. I talk a lot about soul mission and using the Akashic Records to discover what our mission is and to get into our mission. You know what? Our mission, we're all designed to be creators and to create the dream life that we want to experience. And it's uniquely different for each one of us, but at the root, that's what's the same, is that we are here to experience ourselves in the likeness and image of God, who is the ultimate creator. And we're here to create. So the Akashic Records become a self-actualization tool where we can learn about our miscreations. We're creating everything that we're experiencing in our life anyway. And a lot of times we don't want to own it, right? We want that to be our parents' fault or our neighbor's fault or our spouse's fault. No, we have to take ownership of what it is we're creating. But when we don't understand why we're miscreating or why we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, we get frustrated. And it can be really easy to blame someone else for that. The Akashic Records allow us to take ownership back, to understand ourselves from a perspective of unconditional love. And when you look at the reasons why you're miscreating in your life from a perspective of unconditional love, guess what? You no longer have to be wrong or the bad guy for making a mistake and creating what you don't really want to create. You begin to understand, oh, of course, that's what I'm creating because my energy vibrational frequency is telling the universe to bring that into my field. How do I shift and change that? So for me, the Akashic Records are a tool that truly allow us our freedom back.
Ooh, so powerful. I love that. So, Emily, there's going to be a lot of people who, number one, this is the first time they're hearing about the Akashic record.
Right.
And
Well, maybe through that word Akashic Records. I'm going to say that you've probably stumbled on to this idea of the Akash, or all of this information that's around us constantly. Maybe through some other vocabulary. Have you heard other vocabulary for Akash or Akashic Records?
oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I have actually.
I'll share with you some of the constructs or vocabulary that I've heard before, and before I knew this term Akashic Records, how I was actually coming into contact with this field, but it was called a bunch of different things. So I grew up Southern Baptist, small town Missouri girl, all up in the church. And of course, in Christianity, in the Bible, this is known as the Book of Life. And growing up in that construct, the Book of Life was taught to me as, oh, this is something that Jesus, which I always thought was kind of crazy that Jesus was writing your name. This, I'm like, doesn't Jesus have a secretary that does that for you or something? Come on, he's got to have an assistant. But somehow our name got written in this Book of Life, and then we were saved, right? If you go forward in church and you accept Jesus as your savior, you get to enter into this Book of Life and you get to be saved. So it was a really limited perspective of what this bigger picture is. But the Book of Life, excuse me, and how it's referenced in the Bible, that is the Akash. That's the Akashic Records. In the Native American tradition, this is known as the Song of the Spheres, meaning it's a vibrational frequency that is emitted through our universe that is always present with us. And you notice the ringing in your ears that you hear at night when it's the sound of silence, which really isn't silent, it's this ringing in the ears, right? That is also the Akash. That's the Song of the Spheres that the Native Americans would refer to. And, back to my religious upbringing, I was taught that the voice of God is with you always, from the moment you take your first breath till you exit. Well, that voice of God, that's that silence, the ringing in the ears, the song, the sound of the spheres, like all of the celestial bodies in our universe making this vibrational frequency. And one of the easiest ways to tap into the Akash is just get in a room that's really silent. For me, it's when my kids go to bed at night and it's quiet in the house, but I hear that high-pitched noise. That is the Akashic Records. That is the realm of information, or the God voice, that we can continually tap into. And of course, it's always here. Whether we're quiet enough to tap in and actually hear that frequency or not, it prevails, it persists. It is all around us in every single moment. And it's a technology, actually, V. It's a technology that once we learn to quiet down our mind, create space in our emotions, our mind, and our field, we get to tap into that and we get to extract the intelligence that's there for us.
Oh, wow. That is so powerful, Emily. I love that you shared there, because that was going to be my next question, to be like, okay, so how could someone attempt to connect with the Akashic records, their own records? So you're starting to share a little bit about, like, it can be just as simple as just quietening down. It could just be meditating and getting to a space where your mind gets a little bit more quiet. So there's room for you to, like, attempt to do something.
Yes. So let me give you a little history of the word Akash. Akash is a Sanskrit word, and this word means ether. Ether is primordial energy. All the other four elements stem from the ether: earth, wind, water, fire. Right? So once we begin to understand that this is the primordial energy that has been here since the beginning of time and that will always be here, and it's that essence energy that underlies everything, it makes sense. We've got to quiet down. We've got to slow down so that we can tap into this space. So that would be like this. The simplest way is slow down, get quiet, and listen.
I love that. So would you say that, let's say that someone said, okay, I would love to do this. Should they have a question in mind? Should there be
Yep.
some sort of intent around?
Yep.
Let's go with that.
100%. Now, this is not to say that you can't just tap into your records and just, I call it taking a light bath. Because when we tap into the Akashic Records, whether you're doing it through your own method or you're listening to that sound of silence, as you know, I have a methodology, a repeatable methodology that I take people into the records that shifts their consciousness. But we should definitely have questions when we go into that space. Let me share a little about how this amazing library works, okay? I'm going to back up just a second, though, because you talked about a lot of people, especially here that are coming into this podcast, may not have heard of the Akashic Records, called the Akashic Records before, right? One of the reasons is because that information has been hidden. We talked about the esoteric knowledge that's been hidden. So it just doesn't come into awareness or into our consciousness. But you know what comes into your awareness every single day? That's the internet. And one of the reasons the Akashic Records is becoming so much more popular, and many people are beginning to stumble onto this information and wonder more about it and to research about it, is because we now have a construct, a template to understand what the Akashic Records are, and that's the internet. Okay, so if we're looking at the Akashic Records as the internet, well, in order to use the internet, do you need to ask questions or put in information to get something back? Yes, you do. You can't just be like, oh, here's the internet. I have all of the knowledge that I need, right? We have to type in a search. Yes. We use a search engine like Google to call forward the information that we want. Furthermore, the more specific we use Google search, the more specific the knowledge is going to be coming back. If you just type in spiritual healers, you're going to get how many millions of hits coming in, right? But when you type in ancestral healing, the search is going to become much more specific. So the records work in the same way. It's known as invitation only. The records work by invitation only. This does not mean that the records only invite certain ones of us into the space. Every single human on the planet is invited to tap into this space to see what is unseen and to begin to course correct, to make changes in ourselves and how we get to show up, right? So, but invitation only means we must invite forward the intelligence that we're looking for. So when I say invitation only, don't feel like, oh, I didn't get my engraved invitation to go. No, you being here is the Akash inviting you in, right? But this is now about you taking control back and calling forward the information that you're ready for. So the Akashic Records only give us what we're ready for. How do they know what we're ready for? Because we ask. So asking and learning to ask the right questions in the Akashic Records is part of the nuance of how we get really good at using them. Because here's the thing, whether someone has purposely tapped into the records or not, we're constantly using it. The records meet you right where you are. It's a vibrational frequency match. What does that mean? It means if you ask a question in your mind, and I use this analogy a lot. So let's say that you're late for work and you're rushing and everybody keeps cutting you off, and you say in your mind, why is everybody cutting me off today? You're actually asking the Akash, you're asking the field around you. And the answer that comes back in is going to meet you right where you are. So if we're asking a question from a state of frustration, yeah, it's going to sound like your voice just answering you in your mind, but trust me, this is coming from universal intelligence coming in, but it meets you where you are and answers the question with the same frustration you asked it. Because everybody and their grandma is out today cutting me off, right? And so we tend to increase our frustration when we ask questions from that state of frustration. So when we learn to purposefully use this technology, the nature of our questions begin to shift. And when we ask from a pure heart, meaning we really truly want and desire to know and understand why we have found ourselves in this situation. Why am I finding myself in this situation where I'm late and it seems like everyone around me is just making me later? When we ask from that frequency, the answer coming in is going to look a lot different. It might sound something like, well, Emily, you overslept this morning, and you overslept because you were tired, and you're not honoring the natural cycles of your body and the rest and the rejuvenation you need. And so because you're short on time with yourself, that's the feedback loop that you're creating with the universe. And so everyone else is showing up to play out that frequency with you that you're putting out into the world. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay. So this is really about my self-care and me honoring myself, which is a completely different question, answer, and invitation to discuss and to heal myself than to be in that point of frustration.
Oh, I love the examples that you gave because everybody can relate to what you're sharing. And so, I think it's so incredible, right? That, one of the things that's coming to me as you're sharing, it's just reminding everybody that it always comes back to self, right? So
Yes.
if we're constantly looking outwards and projecting and doing all of those things, it's sort of like, it's hard to really get a true answer, right? Because you're not tapping back into your own questioning of like, oh, well, what's really happening? But also being in somewhat of a more calm state. So when you're already like enraged and like angry and like, that state, if you're going to ask something from that state, most likely you're probably not going to get the most productive response.
100%. 100%.
I love that. I love that. So I know we've traversed into this conversation, and I know we didn't even get a chance to be like, well, Emily, how did you stumble upon the Akashic Records? And how did you decide that this is what you were going to do? So we're backtracking, y'all, but that's okay. We wanted to also make sure to get the story of how Emily's here today. So
I love that y'all you threw in there. That reminds me of my Missouri roots, which is, I'll start there when it comes to how did I stumble onto the Akashic Records. So I grew up really small town, Missouri, immersed in the Southern Baptist Church. I'm a Gemini, by the way. I was a good girl on the outside and maybe a little rebel on the fellow Gemini in the house. Woo! And so there was definitely a rebellious spirit in me. And when I was 19, enrolled at University of Missouri, I was noticing that I was shoving myself more and more and more into the box of what it looked like to be a good human and to get a job and to figure out how you're going to show up in this world. And I hated it, V. I hated every minute of it. I felt so constricted. Mm-hmm. And there was a moment when I was driving home from university to my apartment, and I stopped at a stoplight, and my mind drifted off. And all of a sudden, it was like my life became clear. I wanted to be an actress. And I didn't even really grow up like in the theater as a thespian, but there was this storyteller in me and a desire to tap more deeply into the human experience of emotion and being able to try on different aspects of myself where acting just seemed like it made sense. And, I don't play small, V. I play big. So I didn't decide I was going to be an actress and then all of a sudden go jump into a theater company. No, I quit college and I moved to Hollywood to become an actress. So as I'm in Hollywood and I'm going into these auditions, I'm realizing, oh man, I am so nervous. I'm way better in my head than I am when I'm actually in the audition room. And I began to realize that I needed something to really control my nerves. Our nerves are our subtle energy body. So I needed something to help me cultivate a control of my subtle energy body. And I found yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, all of these things that begin to put us in touch with our own subtle energy. And the more I did these practices, the more acting jobs I got. So the more I did these practices, and for anyone out there who has started a meditation practice or a journey to really begin to understand and cultivate your own subtle energy, you know that the more time you spend in the presence of that, the more the truth and the depth of what's really happening here on this, in this incarnation on this planet, begins to take over. And so my consciousness began to expand. My frequency began to expand. I began to, I'll say, emerge in a higher octave, right? So this part of me that felt like Hollywood and this expression of myself and emoting human emotions and being able to inspire other people began to shift and change forms. Because what I noticed was I was able to make changes in myself that were helpful to my journey. I began to take my power back. I began to take my control back. And so I naturally wanted to help other people do that too. And I remember the more I got into things that expanded my consciousness, like the more self-studied I was, I learned about every single modality that is out there. And I loved them all. And I felt like they all worked on me, right? And I naturally began to get to this point where I'm like, if this works so well for me, that part of me that wanted to help and inspire others in the acting timeline, I wanted to do this in this new timeline too. So I found that I would, well, first of all, when I was still in the closet myself, this is what it looked like when I was practicing from the closet. I would drop the kids off at school and I always walked them into their classroom, right? So as I was walking back out, the rest of the parents who would drop their kids off, they would be walking back to their cars too. And of course, stories circulate on campus about what people are experiencing, whether it's problem in their marriage or this dad has cancer. I knew some of the undercurrents of what my community was experiencing. So if I found myself walking behind somebody that I knew that they were having some kind of an issue in their life, I just kind of started practicing. And it reminded me of Tom Cruise in Minority Report. So I would just intuitively like moving things out of their field for them. Now, by the way, this was rebellious, Emily. We know that when we become healers and guides and we're here to help others, we've got to ask their permission. I didn't ask anybody's permission. I was just moving the energy around for them. Okay. So I will let you know that I think this is just the innocence of me showing up to learn. But I do recommend that if we want to be the most powerful we can be, we've got to ask permission. But I wasn't asking for permission. I was just moving the energy in people's field. And so one day I finally did ask permission. And there was a friend of mine, a neighbor that I just knew from walking in the neighborhood. And I hadn't seen him for about 6 months. And then all of a sudden, here he is walking down the street again. He's limping down the street. And I said, "What happened? You're limping. Are you okay?" And he said, "Well, I had a really bad accident and I shattered my ankle and it's not healing well." So I said, "Well, do you want to come over for some energy healing?" And this came out of my mouth before I even realized what I'm like, hang on, I'm an actress. I'm not an energy healer. I'm an actress. Why did I say that? But he said yes. And then I couldn't take it back. Right. So I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? Like my hands, I guess I remember it now, my hands are even sweating again. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll wing it. I guess I'll act like an energy healer. So that surrender and that willingness to let go put me in a state of incredible presence. Okay, so he came over, we're sitting outside. I prop his broken ankle up on a chair. I started waving my tuning fork around. I had put some solfeggio scale music in headphones, so he was kind of zoning out. His eyes were closed. And I'm just like, if anybody sees me out here doing, like, this is weird. What happened here? And then his father, who had passed, came into my awareness. And so I began to have a conversation with his father. And through this conversation, his father had revealed some things to me about how he had shown up to help his son when he had had this accident. And I'm thinking, well, he didn't do a very good job. You helped. What do you mean you helped him? If you had really helped him, he wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be like winging it, trying to figure this out. Right. And so, but he insisted, no, I saved him in that experience. And he proceeded to share a couple of other pieces of intelligence with me. And so after the meditation that I put on my friend was done, he took the headphones off and I said, do you feel better? And I think he might've tried to been making me feel better. He's like, yeah, I feel better. And I'm like, great, go home. We're done. And I sent him home, and then into my awareness, his dad was like, nope, you need to let him know I was here. You need to let him know I was here. So I called him back up and I said, all right, this time I made it very clear. I'm an actress, not a medium. I'm an actress, but I feel like your dad came through and has some messages that he wanted to share with you. If you're open to hearing them, I'll share them with you. And of course he wanted to hear them. And so he came back over. And we talked about, well, your dad said that he saved you. And I didn't think that he did a very good job, but just so you know, he said this. And my friend's face just went white. And he said, what happened was I lost consciousness on a second story balcony and I fell. But 2 more inches, the paramedics said when they found me, I would have fallen down 2 flights of concrete stairs and probably not even be here. And so through this process of talking through the information that I got and my friend was able to validate it, I realized that what we are able to tap into when we begin to work on our consciousness and raise our frequency, it's undeniable that this is true. And this, to me, V, it felt like this story trumps any story that I could tell in Hollywood. Humans, we need to know what potential we have that we haven't been taught about, that we haven't trained ourselves in. And I instantly wanted to hang a sign on my door and start helping people, but I didn't have any kind of certifications in anything. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to learn something. What is it? And so I began to flip through a Conscious Life magazine that I'd picked up in Hollywood on one of my auditions. And I'm like, Reiki, nope. Yoga, nope. I didn't know exactly what it was. I'm flipping. And all of a sudden, Akashic Records. I'm like, yes, that's it. Well, I'm a party dress girl. One of my favorite parts about Hollywood is getting all dressed up in the dresses. And when you put the right dress on, right? It was similar with the Akashic Records. I saw it. I had familiarity that this was the realm of all information, past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's it. That's going to work for me. And then I started my training of diving into the Akashic Records and really understanding what a profound technology was here at our fingertips. And I never looked back.
I love this story so much. And I have to say, one of the things that's really coming to me as you're sharing all these different experiences and stories is something that we haven't necessarily said, but it's about trusting your intuition. And I feel like what you're sharing in your stories, like I was going to say, okay, when suddenly this guy's dad comes to the picture, had you ever heard or been visited by someone who's passed on? Like, did you get freaked out? Were you like, what is happening? Or were you
I'd seen enough episodes of Long Island Medium that I knew what was going on. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to talk to him. Okay, I guess I'll talk to you. And there was more of a surrender to, and just like a playfulness, a willingness to be innocent and just see what was going to happen. That there wasn't this pressure of, oh, I'm reading for this guy. Oh, I'm going to try to get information that can be validated by whoever's coming in. There was no pressure like that. It was a really playful moment that I got to experiment in.
I love that. I love that you shared that, because also, keeping in mind, as you've been sharing your stories, you were already doing enough of your own work, whether that was meditation, yoga,
Right.
you've already been doing a lot of practices. So you were already exposed to a lot more versus suddenly out of the blue. It's like the first time something happens, you're like, oh my God, you're totally freaked out. And you weren't, because it was just sort of like, oh, you were in the flow, just kind of going with what was coming to you. So I love that you shared that. So I'm going to now kind of go ahead. You're about to say something.
Yeah, well, this just popped in, and here this is a key that will shift things for everyone who is listening right now. Okay. This is the key. When you notice things that are happening, you want to train yourself to get curious rather than judgmental. If we will trade judgment for curiosity, everything about your life will change. But see, what happened was I didn't judge it like, oh, this is scary, or, oh, I don't know if this is real. I got curious. I asked a question. What am I supposed to do with this? And if people are experiencing things that feel weird or out of their norm, rather than judging it and having a reaction to it that is either fear or, oh man, I was brought up in a religious household, we're not supposed to do that. Get curious. What's happening here? Just start asking questions like a 2-year-old. Why is this happening to me? What am I supposed to do with this? Just begin asking questions and then listen for the answers. But that's the key right there. If the moment we decide to judge something, we're turning it off. We're turning off our intuition. If we can get curious, we're going to tap into our intuition. And intuition is our ability to know something instantly.
Oh my gosh, so powerful. I absolutely love that we touched on this, because that's truly like one of the key things is, just tapping into the curiosity and not getting into that place of judgment. And, we have to keep in mind, it's like, it's years of us being in that space of always jumping into judgment because we haven't known any differently before. But then as a lot of us, who've gone through these journeys, who are going to be listening now, later, whatever, you're all navigating stuff too. And the part of this is, it's about starting to question, because we weren't questioning before. Now is the time to start questioning, because different paths, venues, and answers will come in when you open yourself up to that space.
100%. Curiosity over judgment is a mantra that has really shifted my life. And you know what? I feel like there are collective programs that tell us we have to determine our beliefs. What do you believe in? And for me, belief creates polarity. When you have to decide what side of something you stand on, we are naturally creating judgment. And I'm sure that you've heard this. I heard this all the time growing up. Well, now I'm going to mess it up. I'm definitely going to need to take 2, and you might have to help me get it right. But it's believe in the stand. Fall for anything. Believe in nothing. Okay, I'm really butchering it. You got to help me here, V.
I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be much help here, but I know what you're saying. I
know what it is. Okay. If you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything.
Yes, you got it. You nailed it. Look at that.
See, I only needed 4 takes for that. That's why I'm always glad that there's another take in Hollywood, right? We're really encouraged to figure out what we believe in. I think that that's a fundamental no. Yes, we want to have morals and values and codes that anchor and guide us, but belief in and of itself creates polarity. So I traded the idea of belief for another little mantra I'll share with you guys today, giving you all these golden nuggets. I've invited myself to believe nothing, consider everything.
Ooh, now that is a golden key right there. I absolutely love that. That is beautiful. I love that. Love that. So, oh my goodness, such a great conversation. And I know we have so much more that we still want to talk about. So I'm going to bring you back now to more of like timeline of today. So we did not mention this in the intro, but I wanted to make sure to share with everyone when they listen that Emily was featured on Gaia in an episode of Interviews with Extra Dimensional. So congrats, Emily. So exciting.
Thank you. Yes, that has been a mark. It's been on my vision board to elevate myself to this level of visibility. And it happened last week, which was really exciting. But we got more to talk about this Gaia thing. Because while it felt like one of those, breakthrough moments of yes, accomplishment, way to go, Emily, you're tapping into the dream life and you're standing in this higher level of impact and you're allowing yourself to be visible, way to go. Oh, girl, was it more challenging than I thought?
Why, yes. And that is why we're going to talk about it, because it was so interesting for all of you that are listening. Emily and I were like exchanging some messages, getting ready for today. And I'm a member of Gaia. So of course I'm like, I'm totally going to go and watch and support Emily, like see what she's saying. And I love the Akashic Records. And I just loved the interview. I thought it was so amazing and so powerful, such great information that a lot of people would have never heard of before. And so I don't typically go to the comments section, but I said, I'm going to leave a comment. And I read a comment or two and I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting to see this. So, I remember something that Emily has said, and I've been practicing this myself is, and this is for all of us. It's like, we immediately want to react to something, right? It's like we read something and our blood starts to like boil and we're like, I gotta say something. And it's like, and I was like, no, hold on. Just come back to a place where you're grounded and centered and now read it and see what feels right to do. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to say something very polite, very kind of neutral, and then I'm going to share my own feedback. So I did that. And then I'm like, coming back to exchange some information with Emily. I'm like, Emily, so this is what happened. And then she responds back and I'm going to let her jump back in to say what was created in her field with this situation. So please share.
Actually looking on, I'm like, I'm going to read some of the comments so they know what we're talking about here. I can't find them now in this moment. Where if you can find the comment section, you are more than welcome to read some of the comments. But the ones that I remember on there, which by the way, I don't normally read my own comments either. I stumbled onto this and I look and I'm like, what the, well, I'll show you right there. I've got about a 33% thumbs down. Can you guys see that?
Oh no, really?
I know. I got so flustered. I'm like, wait, what? And I click on the 33% thumbs down and then I gave myself another point on thumbs down. I'm like, hang on, no.
So the point of this is, guys, we're going to bring it back because this is so incredibly important. And it's almost like, the universe sometimes brings things in front of us in like the most perfect timing, even if we don't see it as perfect timing. And it's sort of like, I noticed something, Emily noticed something. And, if you look at Emily and everything that we're sharing, and, I read all her bio information, you would all be like, oh my God, Emily's like the celebrity. She's done Hollywood. She's doing this. She's on Gaia. She's got everything figured out. Like, what would she need to be worrying about? Right. And here we are. And she's like, I'm getting negative reviews.
What is this? Well, furthermore, I'm like, well, what do they even have to say bad about me? And I go look, and most of the things were, well, I do get nailed for talking too much a lot of times. I'm learning. And she's too rehearsed. She's too Hollywood. She's too this, too that. And it bugged me and it hurt my feelings. And not only did it hurt my feelings, but then it ticked me off too, because I felt like, I've already worked through this. I've already lived the negative reviews in Hollywood. I was on a soap opera back in my Hollywood days, and I replaced a really popular character. I don't know if there are any old school soap opera fans out there, but when they replace your characters on there are people who get fired up. Yeah. And so I got a lot of hate mail coming in for replacing the favorite on this show. And I felt like I had worked through a lot of that. But obviously this charge was coming up in my body and I was revisiting it again. Mm-hmm. So I took my own medicine. I decided to lean into the Akash and say, all right, what's going on here? And that's when they began to shift my perspective. And they began to show me that, and V, I feel actually, because it was happening through me, and sometimes maybe you guys understand this too, it can be more difficult for us to verbalize or put really beautiful vocabulary on it. But I had a raw, vulnerable moment where I'm stumbling through this with V, and I'm like, and I was sad, but then my records are this, and then you actually reflected back to me in a way that was so beautiful that I don't want to steal your thunder on this one, but I want to toss it back to you now, because I feel like you really gave vocabulary to what I was experiencing about how how powerful the records are, that they bring this light into the darkness. If you want, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to stumble over it too much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it was just, very powerful insights. And like you said, Emily, I think sometimes it's like when you're so close to a situation, and no matter how many tools you have, we're still human, right? So
yes,
it's almost nice to get a different perspective from someone. And I think it's so, the universe worked it out perfectly that you were experiencing something, and then I was also in that field, and then I could come back from a different viewpoint and say, well, Emily, yes, this is true. This is another layer, because you know how we always talk about there's so many layers to the onion, and you think you've done all this work, and then it comes back and it shows you a different angle. That's what was coming to me, is now here's another angle, Emily, now that this has happened. But the beautiful part of it was also about, how we always talk about light and dark, right? We always go into this light and dark. And this podcast is a lot about that too, also saying, hey, navigating our dark moments to like get to the light. And for me, it's almost like you doing the show and what you shared, it shook some things up, and it brings about some of this darkness, the stuck energy. But guess what that means? If there's stuck energy, that means now there's room for light.
Yes.
And so the light is getting through. Of course, it's going to agitate things. It's going to agitate things. And so it's the perspective, right? If you looked at it from that angle, like you said, it's so empowering. You're like, oh, well, look at me. Okay.
Right. And then it made sense. It was like, well, of course, this negativity is going to come up and show itself in your field, Emily, because it's what you're here for. You're here to bring light into the darkness. And this is what it looks like. Yeah. I learned a lesson early on, and this was probably this was like the very 3D part of the lesson. I wasn't learning it from woo-wooville, like, oh, I'm this big spiritual teacher. But I remember when I was an art teacher for my kids when they were growing up in school, and most people loved me on campus when I came on campus, except the secretary of the school. She was not down with all of my light. She didn't like that for some reason, I could show up for art class, but if my kids were absent from school, I like calling to excuse their absence was, I don't know, it just was a block. I couldn't do that. And I walked into the school one day to do an art lesson, and she's on my case about not calling in and excusing some absence. And so I went home and I picked her an aromatherapy bouquet from my garden and brought it back to her, because I realized that in order to help people learn and grow and to be happy, sometimes we have to be the agitator of what comes up in their field. And I knew that experience of her being ticked off at me, but me not returning that ticked offness, me returning a gift, a bouquet of flowers to her, was going to change her frequency. But in order to do that, I had to put myself in the way of her anger.
Yes.
And I thought, all right, I'm willing to do that. And in that moment, I agreed to be this avatar who shows up that takes on the darkness in this way. And I wasn't making the connection that that's what was happening on the Gaia with the darkness coming up until you shared those words with me. And it really helped to open up that space for me. The one other thing that really helped me, and that was like the mental reframe, right, that I needed, where I was starting to feel better, but I wasn't 100% yet. It was like I wasn't embodied in the energy yet.
Yes.
I was like, okay, that makes sense, but I'm still like, I gotta go take a walk and get this energy out of my body, right? So I'm out walking. I run onto the best people out walking in the neighborhood. So again, I run onto a friend in the neighborhood, and I shared vulnerably. He said, how are you, Emily? And I shared vulnerably. You know what? I had a really big break this week and I was really proud of myself until I read the reviews. And the reviews, like, they made me sad. They bummed me out. And he said, well, have you ever seen the celebrities who like go on and they read their mean tweets and things? And all of a sudden I had remembered an episode of Jimmy Kimmel that was hilarious. Gwyneth Paltrow saying, go away, you big bird bee, or something. And she's like, and it was so funny. And I got so inspired, V. And what was beautiful was how quickly my body was able to alchemize the energy, how quickly I was able to go from being sad to being inspired.
Yes.
And that's the nature of the work. That's how we know that we have really grown, is how quickly can we find the bigger picture and how quickly can we transmute the energy through our bodies. And for me, it took about 12 hours and then I was over it. And I was done and I was back on my path moving through. And that felt as good as making it to the platform of Gaia.
That's amazing. Amazing. And, and I hope that everyone's that is listening and tuning in can really understand from like the things that we're sharing is that how important it is to, you have to feel everything. You have to experience everything, but it's always about how long do you choose to stay there, right? Listen, you are welcome to sit in this for as long as you want, but guess who's going to be miserable in it? You.
Yes.
So if you decide that, okay, I've done it for a couple of days, but I would like to shift this, this is what we're talking about. Like, here are some tools to help you bring yourself into balance. And part of that is looking at it from different perspectives. You have to be able to step outside of the situation and say, okay, let me look at it from different perspectives, and don't immediately go into just blame, right? Because then blame is not helping anybody. Because again, that's external, right?
Yeah.
So again, everything that Emily and I are like talking about, it's about coming back to your center and how do you come back to that space. And everything that we've talked about, is really kind of circling back around those things. And it's just so powerful. And, this really works. This stuff really works. And so we're just like, people, try it. You're going to listen to this episode. There's so much juicy information in here, and listen to it more than once, because there's definitely some esoteric and kind of out there stuff. But if you take the time, you can really simplify it also and really make it about you and your connection with, like, a lot of us will say higher self. It's like that higher version of yourself that is there, that's wanting to offer you guidance. It's not just going to drop in. You do have to ask. You do have to say, I would like some assistance, or I would like to know this, and I would like to know that. And then there's an opportunity for it to come in and to assist you. So.
Yes. Well, we talked a lot about the records, and you guys have so patiently sat through some of my stories, but I would love to share some tools and some context about how people can try this at home and actually begin to get information back from the records. Would it be cool if I just shared one simple question that everybody can start with when it comes to tapping into your Akashic records and getting information?
Oh my goodness, this, you don't even know how perfect this is, because my towards the end segment is always about, please showcase or share a gift, a tool, something for the audience that they can work with beyond just listening to this episode, something that they can apply in their life. So you have just tuned in perfectly, Emily, for us to move into that space. Look at that.
You're welcome for being so telepathic and psychic. V, my pleasure. Okay, so here's the question that I would love to leave everyone with, that you can begin to play with in your own world. And this works for whether you are experiencing relationship challenges, whether you keep attracting people into your life who are draining you, whether you're noticing that you have a health issue, maybe dis-ease, coming up in your world. Maybe you're blocked from abundance and being able to source and resource from within. Whatever your biggest challenge is right now in your life, I want to invite you to get quiet. Maybe it's tonight as you are going to bed and you tuning in and you've got that frequency in the background, right? And just ask, what is here for me to learn? Earth is a school. It is about learning and growing. So when you ask that question, and my whole body is just chilling as I'm saying this, what is here for me to learn? And then just be quiet and trust what comes in. And I say trust what comes in. You don't necessarily have to agree with it right away to trust what's coming in. Trust what's coming in means get curious, don't get judgmental. You hear something crazy come in, don't, well, that's some BS, Akashic Records. No, you just get curious. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more. You don't have to agree with it, but notice what comes in. Trust that the intelligence that's dropping in is going to make sense to you after you sit with it for a while, after you unpack it. Right? After you let it begin to bloom and blossom and really reveal itself to you. So if you get judgmental about what's coming in, you're going to block the flow. That's why you want to just get curious, get curious. And if you ask with a sincere heart, what is here for me to learn? The information that comes back. And I recommend when people are starting that you journal write, that you channel write. Don't read what you're writing. Don't judge it. Just as fast as you can go, the next word that comes out, and you'll get better and better at this, but let it all come out. And what you write down on the paper will change your life.
Oh, so good. So powerful. And I'm just going to add to what Emily said is that, when you write something down in that moment, like she said, it might not make any sense, but it could click in a day later, few days later, a week later. So it's always wonderful to go back and revisit sometimes, because it's almost like you're seeing it with different set of eyes. So like different insights come in. So I absolutely love that. That is such an amazing gift and tool to share, that I hope that everyone that's listening will take the time to engage in and explore and get curious about. But this has just been such an incredible, amazing, fun-filled, information-packed session.
Yes.
And I've loved every moment, Emily. And just so everybody who's listening knows, all of Emily's information will be in the bio section of everywhere that this gets posted. So you can connect with her in many, many different ways. And of course, if you're part of Gaia, go watch that episode. It's amazing. Leave a good review.
Leave a good review.
Leave a good review, people. Thumbs up. No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. But I'm going to be reading all these comments coming in. You guys come from these podcasts. We told you about that.
Oh my gosh. But anyways, it's just been so amazing, Emily. I've enjoyed every moment of this. And I just want to thank you so much for coming and joining me on the podcast, sharing all this incredible information that truly, I hope more and more people find out about, because it's such an incredible tool. And just for people to really start to tap in and utilize it to really help themselves move along in their journey, wherever they are, empower themselves.
Yes.
And just help to take them onto that next step and create.
Exactly. Well, everyone who is listening, whether it is in the near future or the far future, it doesn't matter what timeline that you're listening in. I'm going to invite you to notice, how do you feel now that we're wrapping up, as opposed to when you came into this conversation? Do you notice a difference? Do you notice a lightness? Did you have fun? If that is the case, then this modality of the Akashic Records, it's raised your frequency. It's made more things possible for you. So I would encourage you to continue researching in your Akashic Records and to begin to play. play with just surrender and knowing that infinite possibility is yours, that the life that you want to live is yours by divine right, and begin to get curious about how this technology of the Akashic Records can help you get from where you are now to where you want to be.
Absolutely. Elevate, baby.
Elevate, baby. Elevate, y'all.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much,
Emily. All right, everyone. We are so grateful that you joined us today, and we look forward to connecting with you on the next episode.